A young girl participated in the grade's professional assessment, surprisingly becoming a rare primary combat class elemental mage. She thought she was a shoo-in for first in her grade, but she was publicly humiliated by a boy. This was because the boy changed his profession to the only hidden profession, Necromancer, which allows him to summon all the undead warriors in the world for his own use, thus enabling him to summon a legion of undead capable of destroying the world with a wave of his hand. It turns out, this is a world where the game and reality are intertwined. Everyone has to participate in the profession change ceremony when they turn 18, but 99% of people change to livelihood class, which are nothing compared to the support class. The combat class is the profession everyone dreams of. Today was the day of the school's unified professional change. The principal passionately motivated the students on the stage, but turned his head and was very respectful towards an old man. I recognized at a glance that the old man was a rare tier array master. You should know, classes levels are divided into low, medium, high, rare, and legendary tiers, and there are very few rare tier characters in the entire West Sea City. As the professional change array slowly rose, the principal began to call students to enter the array for professional change. However, the first student changed his professional to a livelihood class professional, farmer. This student was struck as if by lightning, destined to be a bottom-level farmer for the rest of his livelihood. Following him, the second student also changed into a livelihood class professional. The array master on the side frowned at the sight. It seems difficult for your school to produce a combat class professional. But when it was school beauty Xia Shui's turn, he was shocked. This student's mental power is more than twice that of others, and she is very likely to change her professional to mage. As soon as his voice fell, an unusual phenomenon occurred with Xia Shui on the field. Two huge elemental orbs appeared above her head, indicating that she is at least a rare professional. In the end, she changed her professional to the rare profession elemental mage, which made both the principal and the array master praise her incessantly. Now, it was my turn to undergo class advancement. The school's beauty, Xia Shui, felt a mysterious worry in her heart, because my top-of-the-class grades had been crushing her for 3 straight years. So, as the eternal runner-up, she feared that I would once again surpass her in the class advancement. The school principal, who was standing by, looked at me expectantly, and then asked the master, "Do you see anything special about him?" However, the master remarked that I did not stand out in any way. But as soon as I stepped into the class advancement formation, a terrifying energy continuously surged from beneath my feet, followed by a pillar of light that shot up into the sky. The principal and master realized that this was an unusual phenomenon, and it was even more shocking than the one Xia Shui had caused. At this point, Xia Shui was nervously looking in that direction. Suddenly, a student pointed at the sky and shouted, "There's something." Thousands of dark shadows slowly emerged from the dark clouds, their gruesome and terrifying figures making people feel as if they were spirits from hell. The faint-hearted students were immediately scared and sat down on the ground. Then, the shadows in the sky saluted me in unison, and they transformed into strands of undead power that flowed into my body, awakening my unique hidden class, Necromancer. This stirred up a lot of envy and fear among many people. Unconcerned, I was about to head back to school. But the array master hurriedly called me, expressing his wish to see a skill from the unique hidden class. I quickly opened my class skills only to find that I could only summon a black iron skeleton warrior. With a thought, a skeleton warrior instantly appeared. The students around showed expressions of horror. Suddenly, the master pointed a beam of light at the skeleton warrior, and the warrior's killing intent immediately rose. The master was quite surprised. He was a level 52 professional, and this kid was only level 1, but the summoned skeleton was hostile towards him. However, the attributes of the summoned creature were quite average. After resolving his confusion, the master thanked me, and then with a thought, I withdrew the skeleton warrior. But the next second, the system told me that my summoning space was 10. At this moment, I finally understood that the scene I had just awakened to was real. As long as the Necromancer leveled up and infinitely expanded the summoning space, he could reach the level of slaying dragons in seconds. Before I could think more, Xia Shui came running over, saying she wanted to compare our grades in the big exam. I just gave a non-committal response and turned to leave. But not long after getting home, a system prompt appeared before me. Host has awakened the Necromancer profession, which meets the requirements, binding to the top talent system. Talent amplification and skill damage transfer obtained. All skill effects increased fivefold, damage taken is borne by summoned creatures. I quickly summoned the skeleton warrior and found that its overall attributes had indeed increased fivefold. Combined with damage transfer, I would be unbeatable at the same level. The next day, my best buddy Gao Yang wanted to team up with me, but I declined. I told him my goal was to get into Xiaojing University, and that soloing in dungeons was the quickest way to level up. Upon hearing this, the principal was shocked. To get into Xiaojing University, one has to reach level 12 before the big exam. Your sister, Lin Moyue, was only accepted into Xiaojing Academy when she reached level 16. Plus, the big exam is just a week away, it's almost impossible to reach level 12. But I was unfazed and said I was confident. After saying this, I was ready to enter the newbie dungeon. The school beauty Xia Shui wanted to compete with me on leveling speed, which left me speechless. What a competitive woman. After entering the dungeon, I immediately emptied my mental power and summoned 4 skeleton warriors. I controlled them with my mind to kill the monsters separately. The enhanced skeleton warrior dealt with the monsters here like a hot knife through butter. Each time a skeleton warrior killed a monster, my experience increased by 1%. Soon, my experience was rising rapidly. In less than half an hour, I had leveled up, and my skills and the number of skeleton warriors I could summon also increased. The overall attributes of the skeleton warriors surged to 125. The speed of killing monsters had also greatly increased. Furthermore, I discovered that the paths of the skeleton warriors could form a map. At this moment, a monster emerged from the bushes, which was a perfect opportunity for me to test my active skills. With a 5-fold increase in skills, it instantly killed it. At the same time, I leveled up to level 3, so my summoning capacity increased by 3, and the overall attributes of the skeleton warriors increased to 175. Next, monsters of levels 5 and 6 became targets of the skeleton warriors. In less than an hour, I had leveled up again. At this rate, I could reach level 8 by the time I leave the dungeon. At this moment, the principal was discussing my leveling speed with the patriarch of the Xia family, and he believed Xia Shui had the best chance of getting into Xiaojing University. He thought that if she reached level 5 after exiting the newbie dungeon, she would have a chance because the previous Su Qianqing and Lin Moyue were also rare professions, and they were both level 5 when they left the newbie dungeon. But he didn't know that I had already reached level 5. But this was far from my goal, so I took the skeleton warriors to look for higher level monsters. Suddenly, a tree branch shot towards me. I was thrown back several meters. Looking up, I saw the stats of a level 8 whip tree. I ordered a skeleton warrior to chop down the tree, but the imagined instant kill didn't happen. It took 4 slashes to kill it. This will slow down the leveling efficiency, but thankfully I didn't need to look for monsters here. There were hundreds of whip trees in sight, which was a perfect place for me to level up. So, I summoned all my skeleton warriors, and in an instant, they all rushed into the woods. After 2.5 hours, the last whip tree also became my experience. Then, I was forced out of the dungeon. Seeing this, the principal quickly asked me if something had gone wrong. I simply responded, I came out after killing everything. When he saw my level, he was shocked. But I stated, it's not over yet, I want to apply to continue leveling in the suburb of West Sea City. The principal, who came to his senses, was overjoyed, great, I'll give you an out-of-town pass in a bit. Upon returning to his seat, the principal began to boast about my achievements to everyone. The other teachers were all shocked and they heard that I had reached level 7. At this moment, I found a quiet place to meditate. Currently, the summoning space had reached 70, but my mental power was only enough to summon 24 skeleton warriors. It seemed that it would take some time to fill up the summoning space. Just then, Xia Shui, who had reached level 5, walked out of the newbie dungeon, feeling smug about tying the newbie record. But when she saw me meditating, she was shocked. How is it possible for him to reach level 7? At this moment, her father came to pick her up. He saw what was on her mind and told her how I had fought my way through the newbie dungeon in 10 hours. Hearing this, Xia Shui was shocked. If there were more monsters inside, could he have reached level 8? The next day, I arrived at the Xinxia Empire Exchange to verify my identity, so I could freely take on tasks and leave the main city. Task difficulties were categorized into normal, nightmare, and the insane hell difficulty. Soon after, I left the main city and went to the suburbs of West Sea City. But not long after I started my journey, a goblin targeted me. It raised its wooden club and charged at me. Seeing this, I moved with a thought. As a result, it was dumbfounded. Its own wooden club hit the skull of a skeleton soldier but caused no harm. The next second it was killed instantly by the skeleton warrior. After that, I summoned all the skeleton soldiers to find monsters. Suddenly, windows showing monster kills and obtained materials kept popping up. At this rate, leveling up to 15 before the big exam would not be a problem. At this moment, my level had reached 10, and my all-round enhancement had also risen by 1 level, changing the skill effect from 5 times to 10 times. At the same time, my mental power had also significantly improved. Not only that, the summoned skeleton warrior has also reached the bronze level and even possesses an active skill. Just when I thought I could freely roam around this area, an arrow suddenly shot out. I didn't have time to react and was hit in the right shoulder, and a black figure brushed past me. However, after confirming with a glance, I found that she was not the one who hurt me. But soon, 2 strangers appeared in front of me. Apparently, the archer among them was the one who shot me. At this point, they asked me if I had seen a black-clothed assassin. I didn't respond, but just expressionlessly pulled out the arrow. Then, my eyes narrowed. "Your arrow just hit me. Apologize to me." The man had an indifferent expression, saying, "Sorry." But inside, he was shocked. The arrow just now didn't harm me at all. Another mage turned grim when he noticed the skeleton warriors by my side were undead summons, murmuring, "Those who awaken this kind of profession are never good people." Lucky for him, a teammate reminded him not to cause trouble, so the mage reluctantly left, sparing them a narrow escape. They should know that if it came to a fight, they'd surely die. Afterward, I commanded the skeleton warriors to continue their frenzied monster killing. Since reaching level 10, the experience needed to level up has tripled. I calculated that I'd need to kill at least 5,000 goblins to level up. At this rate, I could probably only reach level 16 before the big test. I thought about how my sister also reached level 16 before her big test. Although she was a rare sword dancer class, her leveling speed couldn't surpass mine. Did she and others go into a nightmare-level dungeon with more experience points? Is that why she came back covered in injuries? Having resolved my doubts, I decided to check it out myself the next day. But just then, a figure slowly approached, and I became alert. After all, those who come to places like this are usually up to no good. But when I caught sight of her, I recognized her as the female assassin from the day. She asked if I had any food. I handed her a sweet potato, and she devoured it in a second, then guzzled. "You're a mute despite being so handsome." I was speechless, then asked her why I couldn't see her information. Seeing that I could speak, she was overjoyed, then took out a shielding badge from her body and told me that wearing it would block detection magic. After speaking, she immediately destroyed the badge in her hand, saying, "You try to use detection magic on me now." Following her words, I pointed a finger, and her information appeared in front of my eyes. She turned out to be a level 19 shadow assassin, named Ningyi. Suddenly, she seemed to have sensed something, quickly turned her head to look, and I also saw 3 figures surrounding us on the map. At this point, Ningyi got up to say goodbye to me, but suddenly an arrow shot out. Thanks to her quick reaction, she narrowly avoided it. But this was a range marking skill. An arrow symbol appeared over our heads. This was undoubtedly the deadliest thing for an assassin who could go invisible. Then, several figures walked out. The mage coldly said, "I knew you were together, a filthy rat-like assassin paired with an evil undead summoner, not bad." Ningyi quickly explained that I had nothing to do with this and expressed her willingness to hand over an intermediate skill scroll. But they said they preferred to kill and loot. Hearing this, Ningyi quickly warned me, "Look for a chance to escape when we start fighting." Then she laughed softly and said to me, "The night belongs to shadow assassins, I have a way to escape." But I knew she was comforting herself. If she could win, she wouldn't have been chased by them in the afternoon, not to mention she had lost her most important advantage of invisibility. The man bellowed, signaling his team to take action. The mage immediately cast a light spell, not only dispelling the darkness but also increasing their hit rate for spells. The warrior raised his shield, prepared to defend against all attacks, and the archer had his bow ready for action. Their coordination was flawless. Yet, I was not impressed. I simply raised my hand, summoning a skeletal warrior. The mage's face twisted in disgust, and he promptly sent a fireball spell towards me. Ningyi, seeing the situation, quickly tried to pull me away to dodge the spell. To her surprise, her feet were already entangled in a web of binding threads. Meanwhile, the archer let loose a volley of arrows towards her. Ningyi's pupils contracted, and she thought, "I'm done for." But the next moment, her expression froze. Several dark figures materialized out of nowhere, guarding her in the center. At the same time, the mage's fireball exploded on the skeletal warrior, and the archer's arrows were effortlessly blocked by it. The charging warrior was also knocked flying by the skeletal warrior. Then, the skeletal warrior, unscathed, walked out from the flames. Seeing this, the mage's face was filled with disbelief. How is this possible? This guy is only level 10. The other two also couldn't believe it. Their skills were completely useless against these summoned creatures. Suddenly, their expressions froze, and they were surrounded by a ghostly flame. Dozens of skeletal warriors encircled them. Ningyi, standing to the side, had her mouth agape in disbelief. Then, with a flicker of my thought, all the skeletal warriors charged forward. Upon seeing the situation, the mage immediately activated his magical shield, only for it to crack at the first contact with the skeleton warriors. In the very moment his shield was shattered, the mage finished chanting his fire spell, and a hot wave of fire exploded out from him, instantly sending the two skeleton warriors flying. But as his fire dissipated, the skeleton warriors charged right back at him. In the next second, his body was cut into 3 pieces. Elsewhere, the fleeing archer was sweating bullets. In less than 2.5 seconds, a level 20 main battle class was killed, and his agility of nearly 1000 couldn't shake off these skeletons. At the same time, the knight was forced to use his ultimate defense skill, which allowed him to endure damage twice his level for a short period. He then used his charging skill to try to break out. But how could I let him go so easily? With a raise of my hand, I commanded the skeleton warriors to use their active skill. In an instant, the skeleton warrior's aura soared, and the knight's face turned pale. What kind of monster is this? Not only are its attributes off the charts, it can even use skills. As a red light flashed, his defense was instantly shattered, and he calmly accepted death. Ningyi was completely dumbfounded on the side, having killed 3 level 20 class players without even moving. After their deaths, their equipment and items dropped, but the dropped equipment was of no use to Ningyi or me, so I sold it to the portable bank. The only useful thing was a beginner skill scroll, which allowed the user to acquire a skill under level 20. The tricky part was, I had no idea how to use it. Ningyi immediately noticed my dilemma and told me to just shout out the word use. I did as she said, but nothing happened, and she teased that my voice was very nice. It seemed that some kind of medium was needed to trigger the skill scroll, so I tried infusing it with spiritual power. Suddenly, the scroll burst into fierce flames, and I acquired the skill, Corpse Explosion. Exploding a corpse can cause damage equal to 10% of the corpse's life to enemies within a 1-meter range. Although this skill initially appeared useless, when boosted by my talent, it could inflict 100% damage on enemies within a 10-meter radius and even detonate the corpses of slain foes. Simply put, it was an invincible crowd-based skill. Waking up from meditation, I saw Ningyi's flawless smiling face, and my favor toward her increased a lot. At this moment, she handed me a treasure chest. Consider this a thank you gift for saving me. I opened it to find a medium skill scroll, which could awaken a skill between levels 40 and 70. Its value was 100 times that of a beginner skill scroll. I was puzzled. She was chased for this skill scroll, but now she was giving it to me. It seemed that she wasn't a materialistic girl. She then told me a secret: these chests randomly refreshed in various dungeons. She happened upon this chest by accident, and when she opened it, she found a medium skill scroll, but was spotted by those 3 guys, which led to her fleeing from Zhaohai City to West Sea City. Then, she asked me which academy I wanted to attend, and I told her Xiaojing University. Upon hearing this, she told me to remember to go to the Xinxia Tower. The first challenge of the Xinxia Tower doubled the rewards, and the higher the level, the better. This way, you can earn a lot of points, which are more valuable than gold in Xiaojing University. As we talked, she fell asleep next to me, and I took this opportunity to meditate and recover my spiritual power. The next morning, Ningyi and I parted ways. Before leaving, she reminded me to work hard on leveling up and said that when I became powerful, I could level up with her. After she left, I went to where I had fought during the day and saw the 3 corpses on the ground. I wanted to try out the corpse explosion skill I had acquired the day before. I slowly raised my right hand, a strange red light twirling around it. At the same time, fiery flames ignited from the corpses, exploding with a bang. The explosion amplified by my talents was a godly group damage skill. With this freakish skill, I felt confident tackling the West Sea Mine dungeon next. Soon, I reached the entrance of the dungeon, where countless voices were calling out for teammates. It seemed the dungeon was challenging. I strutted into the crowd with a skeleton soldier. As I approached the entrance, a selection panel popped up, offering a choice between normal and nightmare modes. A man tried to use a detection magic on me but not only failed to discover my stats, he was almost scared to death by my skeleton soldier. Others started inviting me to team up after seeing my strength, but I rejected them all and unhesitatingly chose the nightmare mode. When people saw me entering the nightmare dungeon alone, they were shocked. Is this guy crazy? Our whole squad isn't confident about clearing the nightmare dungeon, and he's trying to solo it. The moment I entered the dungeon, I encountered a goblin monster. Its stats surprised me. It was several times stronger than the monsters in normal dungeons. But compared to my skeleton soldiers, it was still weak. I summoned all my skeleton soldiers and with a thought, 2 of them instantly killed a level 14 mine guard, granting me 4,200 experience points, 10 times more than what I would have gained in a normal dungeon. So, I commanded all the skeleton soldiers to act together, determined to clear every corner of the cave, leaving no minor monster behind. In less than 5 minutes, I leveled up, increasing the number of my skeleton soldiers to 56. Moreover, I noticed that after level 10, the basic attribute increase per level doubled from 10 to 20 points, making my skeleton soldiers now have a terrifying 1,700 in all stats. However, my corpse explosion skill didn't level up, which puzzled me. If Ningyi was here, she might know what's going on. Suddenly, a roar broke my train of thought. A giant wolf king of the mine appeared in front of me. Being the elite leader of this dungeon, it had higher stats than my skeleton soldiers. But I had the advantage in numbers. At my command, all the skeleton soldiers swarmed it. Meanwhile, the Wolf King also unleashed its roar skill, but the damage was not sufficient to instantly kill my skeleton soldiers. What greeted it next was a furious attack from the skeleton soldiers. In an instant, it was covered in wounds. It roared again, shaking off the skeleton soldiers on it and turned to flee. Meanwhile, the door to the room next to me slowly opened, revealing countless glowing red eyes. Hundreds of fierce wolves emerged, their stats also displayed. They were weak, but they were perfect for gaining experience. I commanded a skeleton soldier to test their strength, and it killed one in a single strike, granting me 2,800 experience points. Then I used my explosion skill on the corpse. An intense explosion erupted from the pack, instantly wiping out a group of wolves and earning me a lot of experience points. Subsequently, I continued to use the explosion skill on the corpses. In an instant, the sound of explosions was incessant, and my experience points were rapidly increasing, directly jumping from at level 11, 32% to 72%. After all the wolves were killed, the Wolf King reappeared, but it was surrounded by the corpses of its pack. I decided to send them off together. After a massive explosion, the Wolf King fell, granting me 15,000 experience points. The loot was also quite valuable. Next, I ventured further into the dungeon, where the monsters were of a higher level. I had already gained a level in just over an hour since entering the dungeon. At this rate, I could reach level 19 after a few more rounds. Then, I discovered a giant goblin sleeping at the deepest part of the mine. I used my inspection skill on it and found that its stats were terrifying. It even had 3 active skills, making it much more threatening than the Wolf King. Suddenly, my inspection woke it up. It leaped up with a deafening roar and swung its giant sword at me. But the sword stopped 2.5 centimeters from me, as if an invisible force was preventing it from moving any further. It was the effect of my passive skill, damage transfer, which let my summons take all the damage. I saw a skeleton soldier's skull starting to crack, and the soul fire inside it began to dim. The next moment, its body shattered. Then a second one followed. I was shocked that a single blow cost me 2 skeleton soldiers. Suddenly, I realized my weakness was my frail constitution. Maybe if that strike had landed on a skeleton warrior instead of me, it wouldn't have been an instant kill. From now on, I need to focus on improving my physical strength. At that moment, the skeleton warrior was being crushed by the Goblin King. Their power levels were simply too disparate. So, I summoned all the skeleton warriors to attack at once. The Goblin King's body was soon filled with them, wounds multiplying. Suddenly, the Goblin King emitted a blinding light and leaped into the air. The moment he landed, a shockwave sent the skeleton warriors flying. Immediately after, he used a fire-breathing skill, instantly engulfing the skeleton warriors in blistering flames. I watched as their health points rapidly decreased and knew I had to interrupt his skill. I tentatively used my soul flame. Not only did it interrupt his casting, but it also set his head on fire. Meanwhile, all the skeleton warriors swarmed him. The Goblin King, his eyes revealing his unwillingness to give in, collapsed under the onslaught. The system then notified me that I gained 40,000 experience points, a bronze dagger, a bronze robe of knowledge, and a Goblin King's crystal core. I immediately put on the robe, which increased my spirit and constitution by 10 points each and reduced my skill cooldown time by 5%. I had now reached level 12, my summoning limit increased to 60, and my skills significantly improved. Feeling elated, I teleported out of the dungeon. Upon seeing me emerge alive, everyone began to buzz. Look at the robe he's wearing, he actually cleared the nightmare dungeon alone. I chose to ignore them and slowly walked into the wilderness, planning to meditate and recover my spiritual power during the dungeon's cooldown period. The fight had made me realize my own shortcomings, but also the uses of my own skills. Corpse Explosion can be a powerful area damage skill when used correctly, and Soul Flame can not only interrupt enemies but its defense-ignoring attack is hard even for bosses to endure. 12 hours passed quickly, and my spiritual power was almost fully recovered. I was about to head to the West Sea Mine dungeon to level up, but as soon as I arrived, I realized something was wrong. The entrance to the dungeon was blocked by a large crowd. A man was confronting a guild leader. "Your dynasty guild is too domineering, why can't we enter the dungeon?" The next moment, the folks from the Dynasty Guild hit him with a fire spell, and the guy was blasted away in an instant. Everyone watched the man die and dared not voice their anger. Curious, I asked a bystander about the situation. Apparently, the Dynasty Guild wanted to obtain the Goblin King's crystal core, but the core only had a chance to drop from the nightmare level dungeon. Moreover, only one would drop every 100 days, and today marked 100 days since the last one. This was why they weren't letting anyone into the dungeon. They had previously issued a bounty for the core, but the price was only a third of the market rate. No one would be foolish enough to sell the Goblin King's crystal core to them. After all, the core could be processed by an alchemist into the ring of the Goblin King, which would increase all attributes by 10 and raise the level of all skills by 1. All this trouble was because a leader of the Dynasty Guild wanted to attend the Xiaojing Academy, so they were desperate for this equipment. After resolving the doubts in my heart, I went straight to the entrance of the dungeon. No matter which guild it is, they just can't get in my way of leveling up. The young man behind me kept persuading me not to court death, but I turned a deaf ear and moved forward. I then coldly said to the Dynasty Guild, "Get lost. You're blocking my path into the dungeon." At my words, a redhead perked up. "Do you know who you're talking to?" Immediately, my gaze hardened. "Don't make me say it a second time." The redhead quickly used a detection spell on me, only to find out I was just a level 12 newbie with an unheard of class. However, something in my gaze made him shudder. Why does this guy's gaze make me feel uneasy? He feigned calm, aiming his staff at me. "If you take one more step, I'll kill you." The crowd around us tried to dissuade me from being rash, but I didn't care and took a few more steps forward. In an instant, the entire Dynasty Guild was on edge. The next second, a skeleton warrior lashed out at the redhead mage. Seeing this, the mage activated his magic shield and taunted, "I'll stand here, and you can't break my shield." To his surprise, the skeleton. After that, I casually wiped the blood off my face and slowly walked into the dungeon. Seeing this, the spectators panicked, claiming that the Dynasty Guild would not let anyone off and hurried everyone to leave. Half an hour later, a leader of the Dynasty Guild came out of the dungeon, but he was very confused. The place that was once bustling was now deserted, even his own guild members were nowhere to be found. He began to suspect that something big had happened, but considering the strength of his guild and seeing no signs of a fight, he thought they had just left early. After resolving his doubts, he left with his people. At this point, I had once again killed the Goblin King, but this time only a low-level monster core and some equipment dropped. As expected, no more Goblin King cores will drop. However, the mage book that just dropped suits me well, as it can enhance both soul fire and corpse explosion. At this point, I had reached level 13. The time left was enough for me to delve into the Nightmare Dungeon 5 more times, which would get me to level 16. Then, I stepped into the teleportation circle. When I came out, there was no one around. I immediately understood that leaving was their best choice, or they might get involved. The next morning, as soon as Xia Shui reached level 10, she came to challenge the Western Sea Mine dungeon. But when she saw me entering the dungeon alone, she was completely shocked. He can actually solo dungeons now. However, I am a rare elemental mage. As long as I find a strong team, my leveling speed will certainly not be slower than his. Thinking this, her eyes became determined. However, she had no idea, the dungeon I was soloing was not a normal one, but a nightmare dungeon. At this moment, I stood before the Goblin King again. Without any hesitation, I summoned my skeleton army to surround and attack it. In less than 2 minutes, the Goblin King fell at my feet. As for me, I spread my hands in a gesture that I didn't want to kill it, but it helped me level up quickly. Don't worry, only 3 more times and it will be over. After that, I went to the wilderness, planning to meditate through the dungeon's cooldown time. Suddenly, a figure approached. Xia Shui, looking haggard, asked about my level. I calmly told her, I'm already level 14. Hearing this, Xia Shui was shocked. What kind of crazy leveling speed is this? I've only just reached level 11 after clearing 2 dungeons with a team. Even if you're soloing, you couldn't have leveled up that fast. She then turned to continue running into dungeon. I was completely confused. Does she not have a dungeon cooldown? An hour later, she came out of the dungeon to see me still sitting in the same spot. She immediately shouted for a team again, clearly determined to push harder. An hour later, Xia Shui sat in front of me, panting heavily. At this point, she had reached level 12. Finally, I couldn't help but ask her, how can you ignore the dungeon cooldown? Upon hearing my words, Xia Shui was overjoyed. It seems there are some things you're not as good at as I am. If you say something nice, I'll tell you. But I was left speechless after hearing this. Seeing me silent, she handed me a pocket watch. This is a cooling charm. It can nullify the cooldown time of the dungeon, but only 10 times. I was quite surprised. There's such a good thing. This item must be very precious. Judging by the way my dad cringed when he gave it to me, it seems quite valuable. Suddenly, she yelled, now there are only 2.5 days left until the big test. I need to use up the remaining 7 chances, and I also need to run the dungeon at least 9 times to guarantee leveling up to level 15. Upon hearing this, an idea popped into my head. I can party up with you, ensure you level up to 15, and you don't have to lift a finger during the whole process, but the precondition is that we use this cooling charm together. Hearing this, Xia Shui immediately agreed, perfect, I'm tired and need a strong hand like yours. So, after resting for 2 hours, I took her to the entrance of the dungeon. Subsequently, I used the cooling charm and selected the nightmare difficulty. This scared Xia Shui into a cold sweat. Didn't you just choose the nightmare difficulty? When she saw the attributes of the monsters in the dungeon, she was completely panicked. Lin Moyue, are you crazy? You actually chose the nightmare level difficulty. We're going to die at this rate. She immediately thought about quitting the dungeon, but hesitated knowing that quitting would definitely make her the butt of my jokes. To this, I explained, this is the quickest way to level up, and assured her, stick close to me and you'll be safe. The next scene directly stunned Xia Shui. The monsters, which were several times stronger than the regular dungeon, couldn't inflict any damage on my skeleton warriors. Faced with my skeleton warriors, they could only scramble in panic. Soon, we arrived at the lair of the elite boss, the Wolf King. Immediately, I threw the monster corpses around the Wolf King, followed by the use of the corpse explosion skill, effectively saving dungeon time. With each body exploding in the wolf pack, Xia Shui's experience points also skyrocketed. The next second, the Wolf King fell heavily to the ground under her horrified gaze. She never expected that the Wolf King, which her 4-person team had grinded for half an hour to kill, I would kill it with just a wave of my hand. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she would never believe that a character of just over level 10 could solo a nightmare dungeon. However, the next scene shocked her again. The Goblin King, which usually takes over an hour for her team to encounter, was now encountered in less than 5 minutes. But just as she was stunned, the Goblin King died under my corpse explosion skill, and my level also rose to level 15. It was only then that she understood that the gap between us was not something that could be bridged by hard work. Then, she walked to the dropped items, but unfortunately, the dropped weapon was not a staff. The Goblin Staff is the best equipment for mages before level 20. Although there are some in the trading house, she doesn't want to ask her dad for money now. But the next second, I threw the previously dropped staff to her. Seeing Xia Shui's confusion, I pulled out a magic book, indicating that I don't like staves. Hearing this, Xia Shui's hands clenched tightly, perhaps he didn't care about the slight attribute increase of the equipment. Then, I squatted down and stroked the head of the Goblin King. Sorry, I still need to kill you 5 more times. After saying that, I left a dumbfounded Xia Shui and walked towards the teleportation formation. However, Xia Shui found my operation very cute. In the next half hour, we cleared the dungeon 5 more times, and the cooling charm was completely used up. Xia Shui, who had leveled up to level 14, was overjoyed. It seems that I have a sure chance of getting into Xiaojing Academy. Now you are almost at level 16, do you want to try for the provincial champion? Becoming a provincial champion not only earns a lot of points, but also has a chance to join Chuangshan Academy. You should know, Chuangshan Academy is the most powerful academy in the Xinxia Empire, and they only recruit the most talented and elite. The only person from West Sea City who got in there was our school senior, Su Qianqing. If you could successfully get in there, the principal would be so excited that he couldn't sleep. Upon hearing this, I immediately became interested. If I have the chance, I definitely want to try. At this time, I noticed that my best friend Gao Yang was being rejected everywhere while trying to form a team. After all, he's just a level 11 knight, too low level to tank, even normal teams need at least level 13. Seeing this situation, I offered to take him on a dungeon run, and Xia Shui also had no objections. Meanwhile, the president of the Dynasty Guild was furious. Have you lost your mind? You guys can even come up with the idea of blocking the dungeon entrance. Do you think the professionals of the Xinxia Empire are just for show? Stay in the guild for the next few days, don't go anywhere. Anyway, you've already leveled up to 16, just wait for the big exam peacefully. However, the junior guild president asked what about those who have died. Upon hearing this, the president sneered, I've already sent someone to investigate. The strength of the person who can cause us to lose so many experts at once is not something you shouldn't be messing with. On the other side, Xia Shui and I invited Gao Yang to join us in a dungeon run. Hearing that the two of us were going to help him level up, he was so moved that tears streamed down his face. You guys are truly my saviors. Then, with a mischievous grin, he looked at us and asked, tell me some gossip about you two. Upon hearing this, Xia Shui was instantly furious, if you don't shut up, I swear I'll tear your mouth apart. Seeing this, Gao Yang quickly made a gentlemanly gesture, from now on, Gao Yang, will follow your lead, my great leaders. Xia Shui instantly calmed down upon hearing this. But the next second, Gao Yang made a gesture of trust, go for it, my brother, try to win Xia Shui over tonight. As soon as he finished speaking, a fireball spell was launched at him, causing him to flee in panic. Xia Shui was furious, hands on her hips, this guy with the non-stop mouth really needs a lesson. Soon, we arrived at the entrance of the dungeon. Seeing that I chose a nightmare level dungeon, Gao Yang was terrified, dude, are you sure you didn't pick the wrong dungeon level? If a monster from the nightmare level touches me, I'm done for. Seeing his cowardice, Xia Shui retorted impatiently, you're not even tanking, why are you scared? At that moment, I used a burst skill and instantly killed the Goblin King. Gao Yang looked at the dead boss on the ground, unbelieving. The nightmare level boss that I dare not even look at just died like that. Immediately, he clung to my leg. My lord, I'll follow you from now on. If you tell me to go east, I won't go west. Xia Shui started to tease him. You're a knight, can't you have a little knightly spirit? Don't be so spineless. Gao Yang argued back, what's the use of knightly spirit? With the lord here, what do we need knights for? Next, it was time to wait for the big exams to begin. At this moment, the principals from various schools gathered on the city wall, awaiting their students. This was because the big exams were set to take place the following day. Among them, the highest level student from the 3rd middle school was a level 12 swordsman, and the 2nd middle school had a level 13 Hawkeye archer. But seeing that the students from the 1st middle school had not shown up yet, the principals from other schools started to feel smug. Principal Liu, I heard that 2 geniuses from your school are going to apply for the Xiaojing Academy, but it seems that they can only stop here. Principal Liu began to worry, did something happen to them on the way? But at that moment, a few figures slowly appeared from the direction of the sunset. Upon seeing us return, the principal breathed a sigh of relief. By now, Gao Yang was already level 12 and Xia Shui had risen to level 15. Seeing this, the teachers from other schools looked on with envy. Our school's highest is only level 13, but your school, Principal Liu, has someone who has reached level 15. But the next moment was even more shocking for them, because my level had reached the unprecedented level 16. When they saw the rare weapons we dropped, they finally realized we must have been tirelessly clearing the dungeons. Then, the principal happily sent us onto the bus home. On the second day, the much-anticipated big exam officially started. The headmaster handed us teleportation stones, crushed them, and you'd be whisked away to the exam site. As I teleported into the venue, I found a sea of thousands of candidates already gathered on the square. Suddenly, a voice echoed as a towering structure descended from the sky. The trial tower is now open. Different profession. After passing the basic assessment, you will earn the right to choose the difficulty level. Different scores will be awarded based on the performance and difficulty level. These scores will represent your results in this big exam. Personal equipment can be used as usual. However, the use of any other items is strictly prohibited. Any violation will result in immediate disqualification from the competition. With this announcement, candidates started lining up to enter the trial tower. When it was my turn to step in, a few people at the top of the tower began to discuss. He's the new necromancer reported from the West Sea City. According to the rules for rare professions, let's arrange a monster 2 levels higher than him. Immediately, a high-level mage monster materialized before me, and the countdown for the assessment task began. As soon as the time was up, I immediately deployed my soul flame skill, and in a blink of an eye, 0.1 seconds to be exact, the monster was reduced to ashes. The look on the face of the assessing teacher was one of utter disbelief. Seeing the situation, the examiner teacher suddenly became unsettled. What on earth should we do? I defeated the monster in an instant, making it impossible to detect the limit of my capability. At this point, an old man suggested, then let us test him with the standards of legendary professions. Soon, a level 20 test monster appeared before me. As expected, I took it down with a single soul flame. Seeing this, the old man decisively said there was no need for further testing, and directly initiated the second round of examinations. Immediately, a broadcast announced, the first round of examination has ended. The number of exam takers is 10,632, with 5,200 qualifying. The test results have been published. The next second, everyone saw their test scores, and my score of 0.1 seconds was far ahead of the rest. Wang Zihao, the junior president of the Dynasty Guild, was shocked. He must have had inside help. I also struggled when I saw the ranking, wondering if I should go easy on them. After all, my score could scare people to death. Then, the broadcast announced the start of the second round of the exam. Candidates can freely choose one of 3 difficulties, and killing more challenging monsters earns more points. The time limit is 30 minutes. To catch up with the top 3 scorers, Wang Zihao didn't hesitate to choose the Hell difficulty. Xia Shui knew that although she isn't suitable for soloing high-intensity monsters, she could win by quantity, so she chose the standard dungeon. The second-place Stalker, a rare profession, was strong in close combat and solo fighting, so she also chose the Hell difficulty. At this moment, all the examiners were watching me, curious about what difficulty I would choose. Of course, I chose the most challenging level, Hell difficulty. Then, a level 13 elite monster appeared before me, but I didn't even bother to check its attributes, it was just too weak. 2 skeleton warriors would be enough. The skeleton warriors killed the elite monster in an instant. Unfortunately, it took 5 seconds for another monster to respawn after one was killed. The teachers who saw this were incredulous. He can summon 2 skeletons capable of one-shotting Hell difficulty monsters. Meanwhile, Wang Zihao and the others were sweating profusely, while I started eating a sweet potato in the exam room. Soon, 30 minutes passed. Wang Zihao, panting heavily, collapsed on the ground. Having killed more than fists would be more challenging. The skeleton warrior killed the boss with a single furious strike. The teachers were once again shocked, as they had never seen summons that could use skills. Soon, this round of the test ended, and my score was still far ahead of the others. Next, the broadcast began to announce, the difficulty of the 4th round of trials will significantly increase. Each of you will face 10 waves of monster attacks, with 10 monsters in each wave. Regardless of whether you've defeated the previous wave, the next wave will respawn after 1 minute. The final wave will be led by a boss. Kill all of the monsters to pass. I want to see how he will cope. The old man laughed when he heard this. I think he will still breeze through this round of trials. No sooner had he finished speaking than I raised my hand to summon even more skeleton warriors. Facing the 4th round of trials, I summoned 3 skeleton warriors. Coupled with my own soul flame skill, I was still able to leisurely snack on sweet potato. The exam proctor watched, a wave of high blood pressure surging within him. Just how many more tricks did this kid have up his sleeve? The 4th round of the exams was pressure-free for me. On the contrary, the other candidates were all mired in fierce battles. Upon witnessing this scene, the students breathed a sigh of relief, thankful they had opted out of this round of the exam. Seeing this situation, Gao Yang understood it was time to show off. Without hesitation, he recounted to the crowd the tale of how I single-handedly conquered the Nightmare Dungeon. As time passed, only 5 candidates remained in the trial arena, just as the last wave of monsters was being summoned. Recognizing the urgency, Wang Zihao played his trump card, berserking. This powerful move increased his strength and physique by 500% for 5 minutes, but it would leave him in a weakened state for 30 minutes once the effect expired. In this moment, he was like a divine executioner descended from the heavens, set on a path of monster slaughter. Before long, the examiner announced the results of the trial. Only 5 people passed the 4th round, and my points still far outpaced the others. At this stage, Xia Shui and the rest believed their scores were sufficient to secure a place in Xiaojing Academy. However, the examiner cautioned it wasn't that straightforward. They shouldn't grow complacent just because they were in the top 5. In the final trial round, anyone not performing up to par would still face elimination. They would be transported into a battle space, where various types of monsters would spawn. The first swarm of monsters would number in the hundreds, including elite-level leaders and even bosses. The battle space was divided into 5 stages, each offering different point values. The highest level of monsters was level 19, and defeating one would earn you 500 points. Upon entering the battle space, the examiner could only monitor your point fluctuations, so you were free to use any tricks you had up your sleeve. In the next moment, I was transported into the battle space, just a faint smile played on my lips. Finally, a fresh wave of monsters had arrived. It was my turn to strike now. I summoned 10 skeleton warriors, which was sufficient to handle these mage monsters known for their high offense but low health. The outcome was even easier than I had anticipated.